So first I want to introduce Reverend Victor Cyrus-Franklin. Reverend Cyrus-Franklin is the lead pastor of Holman United Methodist Church in Los Angeles and supervisor of the Affordable Housing Development Project of Inglewood First United Methodist Church. Since 2019, he has shepherded the Inglewood congregation through the transformation of its property into a church and community center with affordable housing. A native of Nashville, Tennessee, Reverend Cyrus-Franklin received his Bachelor of Arts from Tennessee State University, Master of Divinity from the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, and is a candidate for the Doctor of Ministry in Leadership and Social Transformation from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston, Illinois. He also serves on the lead team for LA Voice, a multi-faith, multiracial community organizing coalition in Los Angeles. So he is at the site right now. And so, Reverend Cyrus-Franklin, take it away.
All right, thanks, Bert, and good evening. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be on. Yes, I'm actually here on site at Inglewood. I happen to have another event going on this evening, and so I said, well, why not just stop by on site of the church just to give everyone a view of what we're up to, as we tell the story. And so quickly, for the time that we have, again, Victor Cyrus-Franklin is my name, and I was appointed by our bishop to pastor this church here in Inglewood in 2017. Our conference year starts in July. So July 1, 2017. And so the journey to get to affordable housing for this congregation really began with housing justice organizing locally. There was a charter school on site on the premises at the time. And we joined a coalition locally in Inglewood called the Uplift Inglewood Coalition that organized for a rent stabilization measure or rent control ordinance in the city. There was no rent control. And so month to month, rents were going up $100, $200, $300, one time even $500 month to month. A little bit of the story there. One of the church members was actually a school board member for the Inglewood Unified School District, was priced out of her apartment, could not find an apartment in the city of Inglewood, and had to resign from the school board. And so that type of hostility around housing impacted the congregation directly with its own members as it was impacting neighbors and community. And so we joined the Uplift Inglewood Coalition, organized around rent stabilization, started talking to neighbors then. And with 2 by 2 after worship, we would go walk the neighborhood, knock on doors and say, Jesus teaches us to love our neighbors. One way to love our neighbors is to make sure our neighbors can afford to live here. So sign this petition is just a sign of loving our neighbors enough to say we want to make sure everyone can afford here. Fast forwarding just a bit, the charter school on the premises lost its charter. And so the church lost $20,000 a month in rent. So the church began to explore what were the possibilities. So it was through the rent control organizing that the church was introduced to LA Voice. And it was through LA Voice the church was introduced to the team from Making Housing and Community Happen, especially Jill Shook and Andre White, who's on the team also now with CLP, Congregational Land Partners. And so from there, and Phil Burns, of course, who's on with us tonight. And so from there, we began to explore what the possibilities were, what the opportunities were around affordable housing on site. And so in working with our denominational office, our district office, conference office, one of our staff people is on right now, Sandy Peruta, who we work intimately with and who works with congregations in our network, in our system, in our denomination. I began to really explore the feasibility of doing a project. And so the guidance and the advice that we received from folks like Phil, for instance, Phil's and with the Arroyo Group were responsible for stewarding the housing element for the city of Inglewood. So they knew intimately what was going on with city government leaders in terms of what they were trying to do, what they were hoping to do, what some of the limitations were to help us negotiate the process. Folks like Andre, who were on the team, were just very brilliant in helping to negotiate with developers around terms with an option agreement to help meet the mutual needs of the church and the developer. And then the guidance of folks like Jill. I mean, this is a church, right? And so to do this type of work, we have the time to worship. So Jill was one of the folks who would come to preach when I was out, just to speak a word of life to the church, to help them connect what we're doing to mission and not just building buildings. What's the purpose of why this is so important and why the struggle? And so yeah, we started that journey in 2019, and with having the right team to give us the capacity to be good stewards of the resources that we had, make wise decisions, know what the limitations were, know what the possibilities were. That helped the church have strong footing as it began working with a developer to explore um, a campaign. And so here we are, 6.5, 7 years later. Actually, I'm going to show you an image of where the current status of construction is right now. If I can remember how to, what was it? Uh-oh. Well, I can't remember how to flip the camera. So I'm just going to have to look over my shoulder over here. But this is how we are. We started construction in February, had a groundbreaking celebration. It's a combo. It's a adaptive reuse project as well as new construction. So some buildings have come down, and some buildings are being adapted. The buildings where you see with the wooden frame, that building was original to the church from way back in the early 1930s. And so doing the work, the church missionally decided to serve two communities. One, so it's a 60 unit development, studio apartments, a half to serve seniors, and the other half to serve low income workers. The church is approximately a 3.5 mile walk from the SoFi Stadium. Some of us watch NFL football. Some of us keep up with the Forum where the Lakers and the Kings used to play back in the 80s before they moved to Staples Center. And of course, the Clippers arena is not far now as well here in Inglewood with the NBA franchise. And so the congregation discerned the need to serve housing, provide housing for seniors and workers so that they don't have to catch the bus for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours one way for a low wage job. And so those are the two communities, we're serving. It's a smaller membership, working class congregation. So approximately 60 members, on roll. And again, a working class community, multi-ethnic community here at Inglewood. And there was a question of really whether a congregation that doesn't have a lot of financial resources has the capacity to pull off a development like this. And that's very fair. But by being resourced with an advisory team that brings all that expertise to help guide and negotiate that process, we were able to pull together a capital stack of $49 million to fund a development like this, to fund these 60 units. A portion of that was $20 million in tax credits through the state. We had a trip to Sacramento. Let me say, back up just a little bit. I don't know how much more time I have left, but along that journey, what the congregation discovered was it wasn't just about our project, but learning and growing with others and supporting developments broadly across the city, the county, the state. And so the church traveled to Sacramento to help advocate for SB4, and lobby our legislators, there in Sacramento. And as a result of that work, with the fruit of that work, we were able to get to the state treasurer's office, who saw the possibilities here. And so even when the mayor of the city of Inglewood wasn't necessarily gung-ho at the beginning, when the state treasurer decided to come to Inglewood to see the project herself, that brought the mayor out in the woodworks to say, well, I need to know what's really going on here. And so again, you have a smaller membership congregation, working class community that was able to discover its own witness and its own capacity and its own power, and to inspire others to do similarly. And so for me, my role is just helping to know that this is ministry, this is mission, this is in fulfillment of our gospel mandate. And everything we did around the housing campaign, it flowed into Bible study, it flowed into worship, it flowed into the way we reached out, to community. And so with the right help, with the right support, with the right guidance, it can be done, and can be done in such a way that allows the church to reinvest in ministry and reinvest in community, because you have the right guidance around zoning, around codes, around what you can and can't build, but also the right financial package that can yield benefits for the long term. So again, I don't know how much more time I have or if there's time for questions, but that's just a bit of our story here. And it's great to work with the folks from now making housing community happen, congregational land partners, and others along the way.
Is there a quick question from anybody? So we'll be talking briefly about the benefits to the church financially during the presentation that Phil and I will be doing. But
so would the project replace the 20,000 that they lost? How many units? It's going to be 60 units. I just answered my question. Never mind.
No, I'll put it like this. This is what the church chose to do. So obviously there's opportunity to sell, but the church is very committed to have a ground lease.
Mm-hmm.
And what the church did was endowed the lump sum ground lease with the foundation that our conference, United Methodist Church, CalPAC United Methodist Foundation, has. And so by endowing those resources, the church is able to yield actually more on a monthly or annual basis than it was receiving in rent from the charter school.
Okay, thank you.
And that was 5 million, right? That you got?
Approximately, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's on top of the cost of the construction as well as the music center. Can you just speak to that briefly before you go, Victor?
Sure.
Music center.
So then the vision was for housing to be the cornerstone, but it allows the church to take those resources and invest in mission and in ministry. And so to do a renovation, I mean, the church sanctuary is over 90 years old. So obviously there's a lot of deferred maintenance there. So that allows the church to address the deferred maintenance there. But to create a community center. So it's a cruciform sanctuary for those who are familiar, with that setup. And so one of the wings of the sanctuary will be converted into a music room in partnership with the LA Philharmonic Orchestra to offer music lessons throughout the week, on site at the church. There's an expansion of the food distribution ministry in partnership with one of the urban farms that our conference has at Epworth, to help expand those opportunities on site, with those resources. Offering, mental health services and others, in partnership, with community partners, but to have space that's dedicated for community programs throughout the week. So that every day throughout the week on site, whether you're a resident on site, at the housing development itself, or you live in the neighborhood, there's something there every day that can be a blessing to the community and a blessing to God's people. And so because housing is the cornerstone, it allowed the resources to be reinvested in ministry for the long term. Again, in a working class congregation that cannot depend on tithes and offering to have a future in ministry. But this creates the capacity for this congregation to have that type of support virtually in perpetuity, to help serve folks who are in need. Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering those questions. And let's just give Victor Cyrus-Franklin, Pastor Franklin, a big hand. Thank you so much. This beautiful work.